this next story I want to talk about, Kalonji, was just published yesterday. And it is, I think, one of the most important stories that has come out in a while, that is not getting a whole lot of attention, but absolutely needs to. Let me maximize this so you can see. So this is from RT, Russia Today, and they
Mm.
report Neo-Nazi Brotherhood, how American friends of Ukrainian fascists plotted a terror attack in the US and the media ignored the story. Now, this centers around these people, these white supremacists who planned to attack the power grid in Baltimore, Maryland, black ass city on the East Coast. These white supremacists had this plan to blow up or otherwise disable a power substation, blackout Baltimore, throw the city into chaos, all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
That was reported in corporate media. The fact that these people were caught and their plan was foiled. But what the U.S. media did not report were their ties to the neo Nazis in Ukraine. This is incredibly important. So, this article is written by Felix Lifshitz. He says that American far right radicals linked to neo Nazis from the Ukrainian Azov Battalion have been charged with conspiring to stage a terrorist attack in Baltimore, Maryland. However, he says U.S. media reporting on the story does not mention the connection between the group and the militants. Additionally, the attempted terrorist act may only be the first signs of the threat that Azov members and their foreign friends pose to Western countries. He talks about how, yes, these folks were um, caught by the FBI. Certainly not cheering the FBI, just the fact that they were caught in their plan to destroy energy substations in Baltimore. They say that their plans were driven by their ideology of racially motivated hatred. Um, the pair, they say, plotted a series of attacks against substations using balloons and rifle fire. That's important because remember all of those attacks
Sure.
on power substations in like North Carolina or wherever, and the feds were saying, oh, that these other, and I think there were some on the West Coast, like in the Pacific Northwest, I believe in Washington State, and the feds were saying, oh, these events are completely unrelated. No, they're not.
Right.
No, they are not. I said then that they were probably all connected to a white supremacist plot to attack the power grid in the U.S. And look, here we are. Um, they specifically aimed to carry this out when there is greatest strain on the grid and energy demand was highest. This one of the white supremacists shared maps of targets with his conspirator, outlining how even low level strikes on electrical substations could cause cascading failure across Baltimore's electric grid. Okay, yeah. So here's where it gets really, really interesting about these people. Russell, this dude, is the founder of Atomwaffen Division, also known as the National Socialist Resistance Front, an international neo-Nazi terrorist network. He was put in jail in 2018 for possessing unregistered destructive device and illegally storing explosives. Now, I didn't know that regular citizens could like legally possess destructive devices, bombs and explosives, but that's an offense. Possessing unregistered and illegally storing them. An FBI bomb technician said the material was enough to completely destroy an airliner. And prosecutors said he planned to use it in terror attacks against civilians, nuclear facilities, and synagogues. He posted a video message to his followers from prison, thanking them for their undying loyalty and courage. Um, Despite all of his violence, planned violence, all that kind of stuff, possessing bombs and whatnot, he was released from prison, and he was connected to people who committed murders. He was released early from prison. And on top of that, he wasn't subject to any order banning him from contact with other members of the international neo-Nazi group.
So you said this was he was arrested in, was that 2017,
2018.
2018, and you said he
Yes,
was released early.
he was released early. Right, right, yeah.
Early is that?
So
It's almost like, did he go to jail? But go ahead.
I'm just kind of, he's making videos in prison, and okay. Um, so apparently, Adam Waffin's international connections are to Ukraine's notorious, brutal neo-Nazi Azov Battalion. This is extremely, extremely important, y'all, especially in the context of this conversation that we are having about all this confusion about who we on the left align ourselves with, and we can have a left right alliance. And listen, I maintain that we must struggle with individual people among our class who have backward ideas. Yes, I think we must do that, because some of those people can be swayed, and some of those people can be helped to recognize the danger and the misguidedness of their thinking, right? Because we're all terribly indoctrinated. We've all thought wrong stuff at one time. But we don't fuck with reactionary organizations, period.
Mhm.
Organizations that have an ideology that is based in upholding capitalism, which is a discriminatory and exploitative system that just perpetuates more discrimination and exploitation to maintain a permanent underclass to keep it propped up. we what are we supposed to do with an organization that has an ideology based in supporting the very system that we're trying to destroy, a system that is slowly killing us all? We don't mess with reactionary organizations
Right, of any
because
complexion, and
of
and and and
any.
and, and that
Mm,
would be whether they're anti-capitalist or not, because
exactly.
that's very important as well. Because by design and by default, you know what I mean, you can end up jammed up even with the most black powerish cats that you're gonna run across. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Just wanted to
No,
point that
no,
out.
no, you're right. You're right. So this is really important because it is not. I know people who are watching would say, well, people who are conservative, politically conservatives, they're not neo Nazis. No, but when you understand the history of the right wing in the United States, you will see over and over again times where people on the left thought they could advance their political position by uniting with right wing forces. And in every instance, what happens is those right wing forces do not become left. Their political ideology doesn't change. What happens is their right wing movements grow, and then they become even more fascist,
Right.
and they grow because they have been able to convince these folks on the left that they're not so bad,
Right.
that just that they're just trying to protect individual freedoms. And the next thing you know, you got all these folks who used to be progressive and leftist hanging out with flat out fascists. That has
Right.
happened over and over again in history. So the author of this piece points to an investigation done in 2020 by the West Point Military Academy's Combating Terrorism Center. I actually read that report. I referenced it in an article I did a little while ago for Black Agenda Report. It's an incredible um, report that makes it clear that there is a problem with neo Nazis in Ukraine. So there
And
are,
that's from West Point.
from West Point,
Boy, when West Point start telling the truth, it's a
from
result
West
of a double
Point,
lie. Yeah.
right,
So,
right.
wow, wow.
Right. So this idea that that we have any solidarity with the uh US puppet regime in Kiev, and that we are in defense of them, um and that that we should be advocating to end the war to save those people.
Right.
No, because those are the people who um, legitimized and incorporated these neo-Nazi battalions into the army and
Right.
unleashed them on the ethnic Russians in the eastern region. And when those people are done with this conflict, however it ends, they are not going to just go home and be satisfied with whatever. No, they're going to continue to turn their weapons. First, they're going to go after Zelensky. First, they're going to go after them, after him, and they've actually said that they will do that because he is Jewish.
Right.
And then, because there have been so many connections, and this is yet another piece of evidence of the connection between US white supremacists and these neo Nazis in Ukraine, because there are all of these connections between these two groups of people, what do you think is what do you think is going to happen to us? What do
Yeah.
you think is going to happen here?
Hey man, yeah, and I'm definitely. I mean, you're on point, and I think the first thing we have to do is get our pronouns right, and that's the whole we shit. You know what I'm saying? Because we're not, we that's not our program, and I think that
True, true.
um, you know, these folks that I call the right left, these white leftists, right? Many of them, we have to understand how sharp and savvy this system is, right? A lot of these folks who are pretending to be our allies are adversaries, and their rap may even sound similar to ours. And I think that that's one of the things that we bumped into a few weeks ago. You know what I'm saying? And not to get off task or target, but when we talk about that whole strike against our channel, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't coincidental as to what took place. You know what I'm saying? That week, beefing with certain individuals, so on and so forth, right? So we have to be clear that we have no friends. You understand what I'm saying? We have no friends anywhere on the planet. You know, your comrades are your comrades. There's some folks who call themselves allies. That's great. But be clear that we have no friends. And you can test that in so many ways. But when it comes to these neo-Nazis, we're looking at I don't think folks are looking at the scope of it. It's not just Ukraine. Like you said when you talked about um the situations here in Baltimore where they're talking about attacking the power grid, so on and so forth. They're in the police departments, they're in these prison systems. You understand what I'm saying? And they are agents and operatives of and with the state. When you talk about paramilitary, this is what we're talking about right here. You know what I mean? These are folks who have a vested interest in our annihilation. And until we get that through our heads, until we are absolutely clear about that, we'll be confused into thinking that we're part of the same gang. We'll be exaggerated Americans. We run around thinking that we down with that red, white, and blue. You know what I'm saying? And that we are, a part of the solution, and that we'll confuse we as if we're included with that particular program. So nothing's changed. We know the plantation has expanded. We know that the battlefields have expanded. But it's up to us to decide where we stand as a whole, as African people. you know yeah, it's cool. I love having comrades of different you know groups and situations. That's great. But the reality is, when it comes down to the come down, what you gonna do? You know what I'm saying? Whose side you gonna be on? And this is where we have to be clear, because I think that um we confuse ourselves. We trip over our own ideologies, and we believe that that we're in the same game when we're not. When, like you said, them talking about going after Zelensky, what do you think they got for us?
Right,
You know what I'm
right.
saying? You think they give two shits about Africans anywhere on the planet?
And so this, and I was just thinking about Cop City, And the fact that the United States has been arming these people in Ukraine since 2014. The coup in Ukraine in 2014 was carried out because the US government under Barack Obama and Vice President Joe Biden armed these violent neo Nazi factions to run Viktor Yanukovych out of the country. They committed a bunch of massacres. And then the U.S. puppet president, I forget the name of the guy who came after Yanukovych, but then he turns around and gives the far right neo-Nazi fascist parties legitimacy in the government. They won, and people will say, "Oh, well, they don't have a majority in the government." I don't care if it's one. I don't care if it's one of them, but
Right.
it's more than one of them. And not only did they win seats in the basically the equivalent of the Ukrainian Congress, I think it's called the Rada, but they won mayorships in several key cities. So this is what is happening now that we are talking about is as Sean said in the chat, it is the natural conclusion for the US arming these people in 2014, knowing full well who they were. They were neo Nazis. They were adherents to Stepan Bandera, who was a war criminal and a Nazi sympathizer who carried out massacres on behalf of Hitler in Ukraine. These people, they have a holiday for him,
Hmm.
like a national holiday for him. They love this man. This is just the natural progression of that happening. And so Ukraine has really been, since 2014, it has been the international training ground for right wing neo Nazi forces around the world. And we're seeing like Cop City in Atlanta. Think of Ukraine as like the international fascist cop city.
Without a doubt. Without